Welcome to our next session, which is Become Data-Driven and Learn to Deal with Siloed Data and Inconsistent Tools in Various Skill Levels. Kevin, are we all set for the presentation?
I think go ahead, Travis. I can see your screen. Yep.
All right. Perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining wherever you may be this fine day. My name's Travis Jeanneret, and with me today will be Chen and Kelvin Liu. And we're going to be talking to you about a customer journey that we went through that hopefully has some applicability to all of you. And definitely feel free to use the chat or the things. We have some folks watching that, so we can answer questions as we go along. All right, so let me dive in. Up front, just the normal IBM disclaimers. IBM statements regarding these are under discretion, et cetera, et cetera. You guys can read these. Notes and disclaimers. And then the final disclaimer, and then let's get into the actual content. Right. So what is the session about today that we're going to be talking about? It's about walking through a journey with our customer that started with them wanting to become a data-driven organization where they can have analytics and advanced analytics available across the organization or in a more democratized type of way. And as part of this, we're going to spend some time around Watson Studio and hear how that was used and what that was done with the customer, as well as just about Watson Studio overall from Yen. And then Kelvin's going to take us through a demonstration later on around Watson Machine Learning Accelerator, so you guys can see that. I'm going to take you through some Cloud Pak for Data pieces in which the customer chose and how that was implemented, as well as walk you through the overall journey. So once again, thanks everyone for being here. All right, contents, I will go through this. All right, so let's start off with what was this enterprise? What was their goal? What did they want to accomplish? And then what were their challenges in getting there? But like I mentioned, part of their directives and objectives they put in place was to become a data-driven organization. In other words, they wanted good, easy access to data, as well as then how can they then expand that access to different organizations, as well as then have the analytic tools and capabilities to do that and then infuse that back into the organization. But as part of that, they knew they had some challenges to start. They knew they had multiple areas of siloed data, like many of you do. They have inconsistent tools today, right? So which also led to different skills, different abilities to complete the work and get value from the projects that they were working on. Executives wanted explainability, so into AI, ML capabilities. They wanted to be able to understand why the predictions and things are happening, and they didn't have that viewpoint today. And because of that, there was some lower confidence within the business units on them being able to deliver it within the business unit or the central org being able to deliver that within the needs and constraints of the enterprise. All right, so this is the goal. This is the starting point. They asked IBM to come in and assist them with this project. And so we kind of took them through a journey, right? And that journey really had three main parts that I'm going to walk us through. And I'm going to start off talking about what are some of the requirements and capabilities that they needed to be successful. And then also I'm going to talk about, let me go back to this later. And I'm also going to talk about how the solution was architected and deployed. And then I'm also going to talk through the use cases and things that we did with the customer that led to some of their success and some of their ongoing new plans on how they're doing the next phase of their implementations. All right. So we would first dive into when we talk through with them the things that are needed within a data and AI platform to be successful. You guys have probably seen this before, but we focused around these four domains, right? Around collect, organize, analyze, and infuse. And the goal was to, within the collect piece, be able so that they had the opportunity to push workload where it needed to be, ingest data of all sizes, right? And they have a lot of data in their organization. They have, since it's an energy company, they have meter data, they have usage data, they have customer data, they have commercial customer data, they have all kinds of large data sets. So the ability to ingest and or connect to those where they were is extremely important. Then they also wanted to be able to understand where their data is, so the data scientists and others could easily use it, right? To become a data-driven organization, you have to be able to understand how to connect to your data and where the good quality data is to use quickly for projects. A big piece of what they wanted to do is they wanted to have a central organization in which they could have a set of tools that could fit different skill levels and personas. So that the ability to make predictive models or analyze data via coding, via drag and drop, or just via an automated click was all very important to them to meet their requirements as an organization. It was also really big for them to be able to collaborate, right? They wanted to be able to have a central core group where that group is able to be the advanced experts, right? But they also wanted different business units to be able to have self-service and do their own work as well, and then come back to them when needed on specialty projects. And a big piece of this for this customer, as well as every customer that I deal with around the world having to do with AI and ML projects, is the ability then to take what they have and infuse that back into the organization quickly, and where needed, add cognitive-based applications, natural language processing, NLU kind of things to that as well, right? So when we approach the customer with these capabilities based upon the requirements and needs, it was a great fit for Cloud Pak for Data to be a single integrated platform, right? And their advantages is that it's an integrated platform that could run anywhere, right? That was the value for the customer. Now, to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on what we talked to the customer about, I'm going to talk through a little bit around Cloud Pak for Data. This is version 3.5 that I'm going to talk through. For other sessions, you guys want, there's probably plenty of other sessions out there and recordings around all the new releases and new updates around Cloud Pak for Data. But this is what the customer currently has implemented, so I'll kind of go through what they're doing with that. At its base, Cloud Pak for Data it runs on top of Red Hat OpenShift. It's a Kubernetes-based platform with a control plane that handles things such as workload management, backup, restore, and those kind of pieces at the lowest level. And then on top, if we take a look at those same swim lanes, the same domains, collect, organize, analyze, and infuse that we spoke about earlier, each domain has a set of capabilities, right? Where if you're not familiar with Cloud Pak for Data, then each of the individual boxes that you see here represent a different analytic or data service on the platform. If we kind of break those down under collect, there's things such as specific data engines like a Spark engine or a streaming engine, ability to connect to big data and Hadoop. Our data warehousing platforms also run there. And then to connect to data kind of where it is, we have data virtualization, which is a huge value add to this customer and to others. And we have various built-in data connectors to connect to data, right? Under the organize piece, right, we have a lot of pieces in there surrounding how do you understand your data, how do you capture and document your data, and the metadata associated with that, right? So from a data ops perspective, or Watson Knowledge Catalog pieces there, which allows you to do the shop for data and the data discovery and the data quality pieces that are really important when you want to democratize and be a data-driven organization. Up at the top, some additional capabilities, right, that are needed kind of on a project basis or as needed for the organization. Things around ETL and data integration, master data management, virtual data pipeline is a great solution for being able to access and create new virtual data sets to use for analytics and for other purposes. All right, next, analyze. A lot of stuff on the screen here, but if you look at this on the right, our main premium components within Cloud Pak for Data, right? These are the ones that are all on the top of the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Wave. So Watson Studio Premium gives those data scientists the tools and the pieces they need to do predictive analytics from a drag and drop, or from a GUI perspective with just with Auto AI, or with the ability to jump into notebooks or RStudio for coders, right? It's all there, extremely top notch. And this was a very impressive piece to the customer as they tested and did things. They were very impressed at the productivity gains that they were able to receive by using these tools as a single skill set, persona-based set of tools. On the left is various other types of engines and analysis pieces, everything from our Cognizant Analytics to Planning Analytics, streaming, etc. And then on the right-hand side, it's a lot more of the infuse and cognitive-based applications. Everything from our GRC risk management components to our Watson Discovery and Watson Assistant tools. I've also added Palantir into that list as now one of the major pieces within Cloud Pak for Data. And then at the bottom, we'll spend some more time around this later on today too. So Watson Machine Learning Accelerator, which Yen and Kelvin's going to take us through in detail and show a demonstration later. Watson OpenScale. So all these pieces are what makes up the platform and what helped them with their choice on saying, hey, you know what? If we look at the entire platform and today, all the spots with the, when the screen here comes back with the red dots are the places in which the customer had an immediate need and were the initial deployment pieces of Cloud Pak for Data that the customer wanted to go ahead and move forward with. I'll let you kind of look at that for a second. And then the value add is that when they're ready or when they need additional pieces, then they can just add additional capabilities in the other boxes into their existing environment. And that was a huge value add from an architecture and technology standpoint, is they could immediately get what they needed up front, and then later they're able to add more as projects dictate. All right. And Kelvin, I think there's a few questions going on in the live discussion too, if you want to answer those. Okay. And then the last piece around the requirements that they had is that they wanted it to be a flexible solution that can be deployed in multiple places as needed, whether it's on premise or in the IBM cloud or other clouds. They started actually with their implementation, and I'll show more of their implementation here in a second. They started with a test and dev environment in the IBM cloud that we spun up for them quickly, so they had immediate access to do training and education. Their main environment actually is on premise on their own hardware on VMs, and I'll show that to you in a second. But the majority of their data and large data sets were all on prem, so it made a good technology decision at the time to go ahead and keep all that data on prem and then put the tools and the pieces where the data is. And that's one of the values of Cloud Pak for Data. And the IBM solution was the ability to put it wherever it is needed at the time. And now we're looking at actually moving it up to a different cloud here coming up in the next 12 months, depending on where their new data lands. Okay. All right, so that was the first piece, talking about the platform requirements and the platform itself and the kind of pieces that the customer went through. And we spent a lot of time with them and some evaluations and presentations and deep discussions and whiteboarding sessions back when that was possible around those requirements and the need for a broader environment. And they were able to take that information, bring it back to their executives, and have the value and pieces associated with that. And we're able to make a purchase around Cloud Pak for Data and the pieces there. So here is one of the original views from the initial kind of architecture kind of piece, right? So it's not a full-blown physical architecture, but it does show where we started with them and the components of this, right? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time here so we understand what they did with their environment, why it was there, and the pieces associated with that. So on the left, remember how we talked about they had a lot of siloed data, right? So the goal is that let's start taking those pieces of siloed data, which was spread across various corporate data repositories, a couple of Hadoop environments, a large EDW where they were trying to consolidate a lot of their data, plus some other databases they had that were kind of smaller warehouses and data marts. And the goal was to be able to have a single place where all those things could be connected, right? And have those be repeatable connections that they can use throughout their data journey for the pieces. And with this particular customer, we also were able to bring in some IBM Power servers that had GPUs. And so we were able to take one environment on their own VMs that was Cloud Pak for Data, right? You can see there the Cloud Pak for Data components that were initially installed. You can see at the bottom, just a little bit about the specs, right? So we had around 7 to 8 VMs. Each of the worker nodes were 32 core and 256 gig of RAM to start off with. We added 3 IBM Power servers, or some AC922s that each had 4 GPUs and a lot of memory, right? So the goal is that let Cloud Pak for Data be the collaborative interface and the pieces all the customers needed right within the organization, and be able to make a single solitary type of way to access data and do things. But then also we knew that we had other data sets that were billions and billions of rows. We had lots of other types of data sets coming in, and we wanted to have the extra horsepower and capabilities to better schedule and manage deep learning and other kinds of activities, right? So having Watson Machine Learning Accelerator spread across 2 servers was extremely important. And we also had, at the time, an AI vision solution that they also could use for various things around vegetation management and asset management and those different pieces. In their environment, to tie all that together, what we did with that is we used Spectrum Scale and around 40 terabytes of solid state storage that was connected throughout the environment. So Cloud Path for Data, as well as the Watson Machine Learning Accelerator and AI Vision pieces, all shared some of the same file systems, giving the ability to easily share large sets of data without having to move those across the different pieces of the platform and for the organization. So this gave them a centralized view of an environment, right? Of an overall data and AI platform with all the components there. But what that allowed them to do, they also then created a central group around their analytics team that had some data engineers, a couple app developers, some people that handled the data, a few data scientists. And then their goal was to have that be a central group, kind of a center of excellence group that could be the ones who understood the platform and availability and details of that in a big way, and then have business users, as new projects came up, be able to train them or just have them be ad hoc or individual users where they can do their self-service abilities, right? And that proved to be very, very successful with the pieces. And that kind of fulfilled a lot of the requirements that they had around siloed data, around different skills and perspectives and way to access and use that data. They now have a common tool set that's based upon personas and their skill level. And then they also had pieces in here associated with, now they had explainability, right? They could take and deploy models, they could monitor those models for drift and for bias and for quality, and they now could bring that explainability back into the business and let them have their own views into that, right? So overall, it was a very successful piece that met the requirements and what they were doing there. So to show this off a little bit, let's take a look at the use cases that they were able to perform, right? So step one was the understand the requirements. Step two was to just get this platform in place and start building a list of use cases that we want to perform, right? And then go partner with the business to bring those use cases, into life. So let's take a look at the use cases that they've done so far. And this is just a set of the use cases. So I put down 4 different domains. HR and workplace, energy and field operations, asset management, business operations. And you guys can look through the list, right? But it's a really good list of projects where I would say that probably half of these projects were done by individual business units, for the most part on their own on the platform. And then the other half of these projects were done by that central core advanced team, right, who really owned the platform and had additional skill sets and data science, et cetera. So some big ones. So their first couple of ones that they did that were pretty big, I'm going to kind of go into in some more detail, right? So there was a field card classification one that was done for, and this is actually a really fun one. So when you guys see this, I think you'll enjoy the details of what they went through as well. Customer segmentation and load forecasting was one that was very important, that had very high visibility within the organization. This came down from a CEO and CFO mandate around being able to explain what's going on with load forecasting and pieces for long-term electric forecasting. We also used some help from the IBM team. So I would also kind of add to that of these, there was probably 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of these are also from an IBM side. Either our lab services or expert lab services and data scientists were involved to help them with the project. And some of them, we also used our data science elite team within IBM to come in and assist and build some MVPs to kind of prove out the platform and prove out the use cases for the teams, right? So it's a good collaborative effort between the customer and with IBM. So before I jump into the use cases, Kelvin, is there any questions out there that we want to bring up?
Yeah, so that's one, Travis, maybe you can take this one. The question is, how could the deployment automation be achieved from CPE, Cloud Path for Data, using traditional CI/CD tools?
Gotcha. So I'm going to take a leap on that one a little bit, that may be talking about ML ops, right? And the life cycle kind of from end to end on the platform is my guess. So the answer to that one is that absolutely 100% can that be automated and achieved. Number one, the tools themselves, especially in this latest release, have some pieces built in to help with the flows through that associated with your data pipelines, to your building of models, to your testing of models and deployment, to the monitoring, and then to the retraining of pieces as needed. So the tools help you walk through that, as well as there's a full set of APIs. So I have lots of customers, including this one and some other customers, that actually use their own tools on the outside and use the APIs to control the flow of a model going from one step into another and into production. Any other questions, Kelvin, that was out there?
There's a second one. I think this one I could take. The question is, what kind of Kubernetes storage class used to set the 40 terabyte storage for GPU computation with Cloud Data? I think it's a choice of user, right? We support storage class on multiple different data source. So I'm not going through here because it takes lots of time. So I'll look up the documentation, North Center, and then share that in the chat so folks can take a look. Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Travis.
Thank you. And to add a little bit to that too, would you put some more details in there, Kelvin? In this particular customer, the 40 terabytes of SSD storage from the Cloud Pak for Data perspective and the Kubernetes side on that, we actually use it as an NFS connection in for a persistent volume, and we're able to actually share that within Cloud Pak for Data for all the ones that we're using. The pieces had direct access to that data, and then obviously that it was also there from the ability from Watson Machine Learning, the accelerator, and the other components had a direct high-speed connection into that data, which really accelerated the value of using those pieces. Excuse me. Right, so I did see a question come across as, can you talk about the speed of deployment of such an environment? So if we're talking about the actual implementation of the environment itself that was done, this is just like most things, it's all about preparation, right? So this customer does usually take 4 to 6 weeks to be able to get in equipment and or to provision existing equipment. So once we went through the details of the prep, right, and we used a couple of IBM teams to help make sure that the prep went really smooth. We had checklists. They were able to go through and get everything ready and set from a hardware perspective up front. Then we had people with the IBM power boxes, the AC922s from IBM actually came in and helped install and get those ready and get those installed and set up for use as well. Once they had the checklist of the hardware and infrastructure complete, the actual install of Cloud Pak for Data and the connectivity and pieces with Watson Machine Learning actually only took a few days, right? It probably took mainly 1 day to get pieces on there, and then it took a couple more days to get things connected and up and available. So really it was probably 4 weeks of prep to get the equipment, get everything ready. And it's just because of how the processes worked within this customer. And then the rest of the time was just really 2 to 3 days and actually getting things installed and up and running. And I'll talk, and if that question was partially about some of the large pieces of data and performance, we're going to be talking about that coming up here in some of the detailed use cases. All right, so let me jump into these 2 use cases in more detail, so you can see some very interesting use cases and how they use the platform and pieces, for the success of their projects. All right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is customer segmentation and load forecasting. It's kind of an eye chart, so I'll go through it, just the important pieces. On the left is kind of the problem statement and the pieces associated. So this is associated with long-term electric load forecasting. That way they can understand, and they wanted to predict, right, what their load forecasting is going to be, so they plan and have the electricity and things available as needed down the road without having too much or too little, etc. So the problem statement around this is that their past models and things that were going on, there's been some misses associated with the forecast, and with those misses, which isn't out of the norm for an energy company, but the problem was that they couldn't explain the reasons for the models not being accurate. So it was that explainability that came back to the CFO and the CEO that came back and said, "Hey, we need more details, we need more information." And it was good timing. We now had this platform available. So the goal was that how can we go utilize the platform, have IBM come in and assist, work with the data scientists and experts with the customer, and do this project, right? So part of the issue that they currently were having as part of the explainability is they really only had 2 large segments. They really just had residential and commercial, and they hadn't really broken down those residential or consumer customers into similarity or patterns, right, associated with that. So that's one of the first things that we worked on, right? So our goal on this was, number one, achieve the long-term goal was to have better explainability for the forecasting, right? And then to also have a detailed IBM suggestions for how to segment their customers into better personas, so that thus helps the forecasting be more accurate. We wanted to add in weather data, right? Leverage the weather data and pieces for that to help this be better. And then individual explainable factors, right? We had to be able to add in the explainability in every step of the process along the way. So on the right, this kind of shows the environment and shows how pieces were used and how much data was involved, right? So this one was about having the meter data. So think about 2.5 million residents, around 96 reads from their individual meter per day, right? So, but every 15 minutes. So in the phase one of the testing, there was around 50 gigabytes of data, right? There was around 11 columns of information coming in from the meters. We wanted to use most of that data where possible. We were able to compress that data down to around 1 gigabyte of data per day, and just using 4 of the columns is what we needed. Was what we ended up needing to do. The good part is that data, we didn't want to interrupt their existing operational systems where that data was being used for other purposes. So we were able to copy that data into the environment as a set of CSV files into the spectrum scale cluster, which immediately gave access with lots of high-speed storage for both Cloud Pak for data access and for Watson Machine Learning Accelerator access into those pieces. All right. A little bit inside of what was done around that work. So this next screen, so what we're able to do, we actually created 6 major buckets of usage patterns via the data scientists working the tools. They were able to take those usage patterns and look at them via season, added weather, and see the details surrounding that. And then on the right-hand side, you can see what we did with the tools and the platform that they had to help accomplish that, right? So the main couple of pieces that were used, obviously we had connectivity into the data sets and sources, but these mainly were associated with using Watson Studio for the data scientists and folks to do things with. Most of their work they did within Jupyter Notebooks, using Python and actually using Spark as well as pieces of that within the Cloud Pak for Data platform. You use the NFS connections to get access to all that meter data. And then the beauty of the combination in this Watson Studio with Watson Machine Learning Accelerator was the ability to take the notebooks and things that were originally created in the collaborative environment around Cloud Pak for Data. And then when it was time to go do aggregate activities and analyze and do customer segmentation and clustering around the billions of rows of data, we were able to take those same notebooks and pieces that were done and schedule them for run and use on top of Watson Machine Learning Accelerator, where we had much finer grained control of scheduling and workload management and those pieces. And we had those dedicated machines that were only being used for certain projects available for the project, right? And it turned out extremely well and very successful with that. And Kelvin will show some demos of this pieces coming up towards the end. All right, and so the results of the project, very, very good results, right? We were able to actually apply some very good segmentation to around the 2.5 million customers. They were grouped in different views, right? So one view was around the consumption patterns, and those consumption patterns, it was so fine-grained and detailed, you could actually depict which customers had more electric versus gas, which customers were in apartments versus multifamily dwellings versus condos, et cetera, right? So we were able to really get down into the details of segmenting the customers. And then from an IBM standpoint, we helped them start into the forecasting based upon those clusters and pieces with that. And then they were able to go through now and kind of pick up from where we helped them stop with the MVP, and they've been able to go through now and finish off their work around being able to have the more detailed customer segmentation, which is leading to better forecasting and better explainability and being able to watch the models in those pieces. So that was that use case, which was very exciting for both groups to kind of get that initial bigger use case done. Now, a second use case, you guys, I think, will find this one very interesting. I found this one very fun, right? Being a technologist and a geek, this is kind of fun, right? So what is this one? So field card classification and ingestion. Think of a field card as an individual going out to an easement or to a set of poles with electric lines, or out to a certain area with a transformer, and needing to make some changes or fixes or updates to the physical assets associated with that. In the old days, before we could walk around with smartphones and tablets and being always connected, what did they do? Well, they had physical printed out forms that they had, right? Pieces of paper that had some outlines, and they took those out and they wrote down everything that they did, whether it was changing out some materials, whether it was changing some environment variables, or as far as like the ground or easements and things like that. And so over the years, right, they had 100+ years worth of physical documents, right, before they moved to being completely digital. Which ended up being around 5.4 million individual paper documents. So they had already gone through the exercise of scanning those in and having them as PDFs and TIFFs. And with those scanned in documents, they were able to take a little bit of metadata from those, and it definitely helped their operations by being able to go online, because before you go out and do the next set of work, you have to look up what was done before and the materials and the pieces before you go out there. Right? So having the electronic very much helped, but it still wasn't really searchable. It wasn't really able to access and analyze and have it give suggestions upon that data. So that led to the project, and the project was, now that we've scanned in all these documents, we want to be able to now start to cluster and understand what types of forms, and then we start working towards how much data both typed and or handwritten can we start extracting from these to make a searchable repository to speed up the effectiveness of our field technicians. All right. So the goals were, first step, do as much as we can to classify and segment the different sets of 5.4 million documents. And based upon that segmentation, decide which ones maybe want to go do some brute force technique, and where there's some old handwriting, maybe type in some things on smaller buckets and data sets. But on the larger data sets and segments, what if we could start doing handwriting recognition using some neural nets and some deep learning capabilities, and see how much data we can pull off of these pieces. All right, so all this was once again was done. This is the exact same configuration. This is the value of having that integrated platform. And so we were able to take all those documents that are currently in a doc repository with minimal metadata, be able to copy those over into Spectrum Scale for high speed, easy access by Cloud Pak for Data and Watson Machine Learning Accelerator. And so with those documents all copied over, our data scientists worked directly with the data scientists from the customer. And here's some of the work that was done. Right. So the first piece that the teams worked on together was that they decided to use an open source OCR engine called Tesseract. And with that, there's a Python set of libraries associated with that to work with that. And it's called PyTesseract. But that piece needed the ability to actually update OS-based libraries and different things. And this is where the value and flexibility of Cloud Pak for Data came in to assist them. As we were able to work with them, created a custom environment within the Cloud Pak for Data platform, where that environment, we updated the OS libraries, updated the pieces with Tesseract and PyTesseract built into the environment, reloaded that back through Cloud Pak for Data, right, and through the underlying OpenShift components. And now, as you can see there on the screen, we had a new environment that data scientists on both IBM and the customer could access and use that was preset to work for this project. So that shows off the value of things around Watson Studio and Cloud Pak for Data. So what they initially did was some experiments, right? So they did some experiments around just under 6,000 images to start with, and then they kind of did a factor of 10 on that, did around 55,000 images. The goal was to extract data and location information associated with things on those forms. That way they can start clustering, right? They start clustering on form types, the type of work being done, locations, and those kind of pieces. And they actually were very successful and be able to do that extrapolation in the pieces. And if you look at on the right over there, right, I have the 1 and 2 again, right? So once again, a lot of the focus was around Watson Studio and Watson Machine Learning Accelerator. So we use Watson Studio, once again, with Jupyter Notebooks, Python, a lot of Spark. So we had the right kind of size and capabilities. We had the custom library, the custom environment with the libraries on it that we used. But what we found out was that just within the Cloud Pak for Data environment, for them, it was a little bit constrained for memory and CPU because they were using it for a bunch of different projects at once, and they couldn't dedicate it to this particular project. And then when we extrapolated out how long it was going to take to actually run all 5.4 million documents through, we had seen that was going to take approximately 8 months on paper, right, to do, which kind of made it a little bit non-doable from a project standpoint. They couldn't have the project last that long. So in working with Kelvin and working with the team, we went through and looked at, well, how can we use Watson Machine Learning Accelerator to, in essence, accelerate that value. So I have that piece over here on this work part 2 slide. So the work needed to be doing extraction and some of the clustering at the same time as we were accessing the documents. We have some cool pictures you see there on the right of some of the sample documents with the details blocked out, so you can't see where it was and locations and names. But you kind of see the kind of forms that could be anywhere from 50 to 100 years that we're working with, right? But what was really needed was, because of these complex documents, and because some documents of these 5.4 million actually had multiple pages, right? So you could have one document that had 5, 10, 15 pages, let alone just one page to work through. So what we're able to do is we're able to use Watson Machine Learning Accelerator, and through Kelvin's help and some other folks' help, set it up so that we could actually schedule and manage 50 simultaneous jobs running through the notebooks that were created. And on paper, we're able to take an 8-month exercise down to around 30 to 40 days worth of actual time, right? So it's huge acceleration, a huge value associated with Watson Machine Learning Accelerator. And then in the real customer environment, actually, we're able to take it down to around 26 days worth of time to actually run through all 5.4 million documents. What we found with that too is that the documents with more pages kind of took more time and hung because it took a lot more memory, but all the jobs are able to be completed. And then that leads to some of the next steps and pieces, right? So some of the results of that. So the OCR extraction and the data cleanup and clustering was very successful, right? We could show that there's 80% of the documents could fit across these 50 different buckets, which related to 50 to 80 different form types over the years. And then there was a bucket that was associated with mismatches, right? So there was a whole bunch of forms that seemed to be one-time use or completely handwritten that fit into a different piece with that. And once again, next bullet was Watson Machine Learning Accelerator. Because of it, we were able to manage the 50 simultaneous jobs, and something that we were not going to be able to do outside of that. And we were able to use, from an 8-month perspective, really down to the 26 days, which was really impressive.
So Travis, there are 2 questions
yes.
On the chat room. I'll take the second one first, which I could help a bit. The question is, could Watson Discovery would work for a use case like this? I think the answer is yes. I think the delta, like what we see, the differentiator here is the scale in terms of this, 100 years old of data, right? In image, in Word document. How can we actually scale and be able to analyze all this 100 years old of data, right? And the size, and be able to manage that and analyze, as Charles mentioned here, into 50 threads. I myself was involved in that project. We spent a lot, not tremendous amount of time, I would say, yes, with the client to fine tune, right? To fine tune in terms of memory, CPUs, right, GPUs, right, all these resources running per job that requires to run each individual job. And at the end, we were able to target to drive the utilization of the system, right? In Watson Machine Learning Accelerator, and be able to manage running 50 simultaneous jobs, right, in parallel. And then thus we can drive the overall execution time from 8 months, right? That customer, the amount of time they managed to to work on this data in the past into 30 days. So I think that's a key differentiator in terms of scale, in terms of driving the utilization of the system, right? And deliver time to result. So that's one question. Anything you want to add on that one, Travis?
Yeah, actually, let me put a little bit more color around that one too, because that's everything Kelvin said is dead on, right? A little background too on that. When that project first came to us, it was very interesting because we didn't immediately jump to saying, "Hey, Cloud Pak for Data and Watson Machine Learning Accelerator are the best place to do this," right? We say it is one place. So we came up with 3 or 4 different options in working together. One option was around using IBM DataCap and the ability to use some OCR record recognition, some handwriting recognition through our DataCap solution. We also looked at Watson Discovery, right, as a potential fit to see what things were. Watson Discovery was actually the first one that was ruled out, mainly because it didn't have some of the, at the time, it didn't have some of the techniques and flexibility wanted around some specific clustering, some OCR pieces, and around what we wanted to do with the handwriting. So we ruled that one out up front, and then it was decided that since we already had the Cloud Pak for Data environment in place, and we had data resources and IBM's willingness to come assist with the project, the customer decided, yep, Cloud Pak for Data seems to be the best solution to do this with. And obviously, like Kelvin mentioned, using Watson Machine Learning Accelerator is the pieces that actually made this project a success, right? Is the ability to schedule and do that work in a very flexible way is what allowed us to go through the project. It's a good question. And the second question, Kelvin, that you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. The second question is this possible to migrate from the existing modular CADS environment?
Yeah, I can probably take that one. So
oh, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think there are two parts, right? One is the modeler and one is the CNDS. So on the modeler side, the migration it's possible. So it depends on like how far you go with the classic modeler application. Because right now in Watson Studio, we already have a modeler UI, and then most of the most common features, the most popular capabilities are already there in the Watson Studio that we can host at the same SPSS modeler workflow that you would have in the classic version. Regarding the CNDS, we also have the Watson Machine Learning, like all the command lines and also all the APIs that allows, like we cannot say that we're fully there, but I would say like the major capabilities, including reading data and from databases, and also do batch scorings. And we also have the AI lifecycle project going on that we can mimic the way that CNDS runs the batch deployment of the whole SPSS stream, while give you the flexibility of changing the data sources after the deployment. So I can share some like documentation link in the answer later. But I think this is definitely possible. And then IBM can provide some kind of hand-holding service, either from Master Lab or from DSE team, if there is it's a more concrete requirement regarding migration from your current SPSS modeler workflow and also CNDS.
So in this one more follow-up from the same person. What about the text analytic features?
Yeah, so text analytic features, it's also one of the important one that we want to migrate. So it also depends on like what specific features within the text analytics you're looking for. Like, for example, like we already have that in Watson Studio today to support text analytics, but when it comes to like batch deployment and then some online deployment might not be there. So yeah, I think I can share the doc links that they're more detailed, definitely to check, see if we can fully like satisfy the requirement that you need.
Perfect. Right. Thank you, guys. Just to kind of clean up this last slide here that's on my part before we turn things over to Yen here in a minute. So where is this customer today with this project? The project is still actually ongoing. Like I mentioned, all the 5.4 million documents were scanned, classified, text extracted, etc., using the platform. What they're doing right now is they have a few people going out and they're doing some manual look into some of the forms just to validate that the classifications did as expected. So that part is pretty much complete. And the next step they're going to work on is then now taking the metadata that was extracted, adding that into their document repository. And the next step will be coming back with an IBM project, hopefully probably here in the next couple of months, to start looking at the handwriting and how much we can actually extract out from anywhere from 100 to 5-year-old handwriting. So we're actually looking forward to that part of the project and looking how we can utilize Watson Machine Learning Accelerator with some advanced analytics and deep learning capabilities with neural nets, et cetera, to help with that handwriting piece. So stay tuned, and hopefully next year we'll have a good update on that part of the project.
And I want to add on top of that is, Travis, myself, and the team, IBM, right, the whole will come to help you, right? Not just for successful deployment, but we'll also help you to explore the state of the art of machine learning, deep learning to address your business use case. I think that's the key message here. You see, it's a journey. It's not just one time we come in, we deploy, and then we go. We stay here, we work with you together, all together, to try to take advantage of our solution that we deliver and share with you to apply, again, this cutting edge technology on machine learning, deep learning, and address your business use case. I think that's the key message we want to share and deliver with you. Thank you.
100%. Thank you.